right, so good bad flicks. The Rise and Fall of G. Oh, okay. Let's go over the comments first because I want to see if people are begging for part 2. Oh, the Rise and Fall of G4TV Part 2, Electric Boogaloo. Make that 2 failed attempts at getting games on television. Now we wait for part 2 of this video. I agree with early comments. You need to do a sequel. It's so sad. Oh wait, this is 3 weeks ago. Yeah, 1 day ago, 3 hours ago. All right. People know. People are clamoring. Negative Infinity. Who will appear in Prodigy? Yeah, I saw that. Admiral Jellicoe. I haven't seen Prodigy because, like I said, it's you know, it's more for kids, but I'll eventually get around to watching it. All right. So this video, I found this quite a number of years ago for the first downfall of GoodBadFlick, or sorry, for G4. I will pinpoint the second where he starts talking about the shows and go, yeah, this is where I stopped.
In the early 2000s, the video game industry was at a crossroads. With every passing console generation, games were getting closer and closer to mainstream success. At the time, it was the 6th generation of home consoles, which was populated by the Sega Dreamcast, Nintendo GameCube, Microsoft Xbox, and Sony PlayStation 2. With games and systems flying off the shelves in record numbers, Charles Hirschhorn was looking to capitalize on this new ground. Hirschhorn was the president of Disney Animation and noticed not only the popularity in gaming, but in the drastic increase in the quality of graphics from even a few years before. At the time, there were no television channels that focused solely on video games. There was Tech TV, which started back in 1998 as ZDTV, but that was more about technology than just games. There were also websites like Sudo.com that had the All Games Network channel, but in order to watch those shows on players larger than the size of a postage stamp, you needed a broadband connection, something most people in the US didn't have then. After visiting the trade show E3 for the first time, Hirschhorn decided to create a channel that focused on both games and game culture. He saw how passionate the people at E3 were about games, and thought they would naturally gravitate to a channel that was aimed directly at them. He saw the potential, as well as dollar signs, in this untapped market. The idea was to make a channel that would appeal to the teenage demographic, the ones with lots of money and tons of free time. With this new frontier, it would bring in advertisers eager to get their product in front of millions of potential customers. Hirschhorn wanted the channel to be like the early days of MTV, when the channel had a rebellious attitude and an almost underground feel. Gamers were intrigued with the idea of an all-gaming channel, and on April 24th, 2002, G4TV for Gamers launched. G4 was owned by the cable company Comcast, and with their deep pockets, they spent a fair amount of money trying to get the word out about it. For the first week, they ran a non-stop marathon of Pong. After that, they went into their lineup of original game-oriented programming. There was Arena, hosted by Will Wheaton and Travis Oates, which was a show that focused on multiplayer competition. Blister, hosted by Bill Sindelar, was a show about action and adventure games. Blister was also the first show to air after the Pong marathon. Cheat was a show dedicated to cheats, tips, and tricks for popular games. It was hosted by Corey Rouse. Cinematech would show cutscenes, trailers, and cinematics for video games. The show had no host, and it was just a non-stop 30-minute block of game footage. Filter was a top 10 list show about—
Filter, that's the name of the show. That's the one with Diane Mizoda. That's the one that we couldn't figure out the other night. So yeah, it was Filter.
About numerous game-related topics. They had episodes like Best Music Game, Most Controversial Games, and Best Cutscenes. The show was hosted by actress Diane Mizoda. Game On was a show where hosts Randy Kagan and Matt Gallant—
If you don't know who Diane Mizoda is, she was in the third Austin Powers movie. She was one of the Japanese twins. She was not fuck you, fuck me. We're going to see the twins.
Would travel across the country to pick people off the street and challenge them to compete with others in their selection of games. G4TV.com
That's not a bad concept. Let me rewind that for a second.
Was a show where hosts Randy Kagan and Matt Gallant would travel across the country to pick people off the street and challenge them to compete with others in their selection of games.
That's not a bad concept for a show. I never saw that when I was watching G4. But man, that is a good idea for a show. Like, it's hard to make an audience believe that you can do that like you're just finding random people on the street and saying, hey, come with me, we're gonna play video games. But that would be a good concept for a show. Like, grab regular Joe off the street and just be like, hey, come with me in this building. That's like, all right, we don't have no idea what this guy is, but we want you to play this, and just spring it on him. Just be like, all right, you're gonna sit here, you're gonna play Double Dragon until you die. You're gonna get the highest score wins. You did something like that, right? Well, the Rando Retro Challenge was like, well, I mean, we had willing participants. People were raising, like, when I did the show, people were raising their hands in the audience. It's like, yeah, I want to play. And I would call them out and be like, I did the Game Grumps thing. So it's just like, hey, you holding the Link amiibo, get up here. And then I would spin the wheel and they would play the game. But I mean, that's a cool concept too. We're just picking people off the street, and having that challenge.
G4TV.com was a video game talk show hosted by Laura Foy, Tina Wood, and Scott Rubin. Each week, they would discuss a different topic in the game community and would often have industry folks in the studio for interviews.
Love this show. This was one of the big shows that I got pissed when they canceled it. Because, like, this was just, like, and people, like, this was a call-in show, too. So, like, if you had, like, any pertinent, like, issues or anything you wanted to talk about the games industry, this was the show to do it on. And like they said, they had industry people on there. I mean, Tommy Tallarico was on there, Victor Lucas was on there, because they were all part of the G4 family, right?
As a way to make the show interactive, they would set up calls with people from the G4 forums to discuss the topic of the week. Two of the hosts had come from Pseudo.com, Laura Foy and Scott Rubin. Laura was the co-host on Judge Cal's High Weirdness, a show about bizarre videos they either found or that people sent them. Scott Rubin started the All Games Network in 1996, which was hosted on Pseudo's Game Channel. Icons was a show done documentary style about different iconic figures in the gaming industry.
And, I mean, the spiritual successor to this right now would be Norm, the Game Historian. I don't sub to Norm. Go sub to Norm. He does good work.
From fictional characters like Lara Croft and Pac-Man, to industry innovators like Shigeru Miyamoto and Will Wright, Judgment Day was a video game review show hosted by Victor Lucas and Tommy Tallarico.
Yeah, that's what it was. So, in Canada, it was called Reviews on the Run. It was an offshoot of like the little quick segment of Electric Playground that they used to do. So like at the end, they would review like 3 or 4 video games, like bam, 6, and they would have this format. There would just be anywhere, wherever they were filming, and then just do the reviews, and they would overlay it like that. Which, just be told, I really want to do a video like that. There's a series of videos I wanted to do, for people who inspire me, and just kind of do like tribute stuff to that. I attempted it. I tried to do a boss rush of KI on Game Boy, and that game's impossible. It's so hard. I can't do fighting games. But I'd love to get Melanie and maybe like a couple other people, and just like take some of the newer games coming out, review them, do the overlay, have like the discussion back and forth, and then we would rank them. So that's on my that's in my mind palace right now for stuff.
In the mid-90s, Lucas created a series called The Electric Playground, where they reviewed everything from movies to gear to comics. A segment within the show called Reviews on the Run was picked up by G4 and turned into Judgment Day. Tommy Tallarico is an award-winning industry veteran and music composer. He was a driving force behind improving the quality of video game music. In 1990,
thoughts and opinions about Tallarico. Okay, I don't 100% agree on his opinions about, because he's like, oh, bleeps and bloops, and it's like, he's talking about chiptune music. He hates chiptune music. He also hates that the same sound effect for, I mean, you know, hearing the same sound effect for footsteps isn't that bad, but like, he's one of those ones that was championing for like, we need real sounds and real audio. It's like, yeah, but respect the fact too that like guys like Koji Kondo, sorry, I that's the only one I can think of right now. Koji Kondo doing the music for Mario Brothers. It's like they did more with less. It's like, yeah, you can do all the orchestrated stuff, but like there's a simplicity and a magic with chiptunes. Nobuo Uematsu, yeah, like I mean, you know, when he was so critical about the Famicom chipset too, but he's just like, I can't get my full thing on there. I make good stuff, but I can't get my full thing out there. And then when, you know, he made Final Fantasy IV on the SNES, he was just like, all right, now I get to go all out, all these channels and stuff. Like, don't discredit chiptunes. Chiptunes can be
He
magic.
did the soundtrack for the Terminator on the Sega CD. In it, he's playing the electric guitar, which was the first time that had ever been done in a video game.
That's what that tune's from. Okay. So there's a clip of there's a Game Chasers episode where they bought KB Toys display cases, and they go over to Billy's cousin Chris's house to power wash them off because they painted them over with black, and underneath that said KB Toys and Nintendo 64, and it was like cool stuff. And this song plays while they're doing it, and I was like, what the fuck is that song? I know it from something. Yeah, Terminator on Sega CD doesn't look like that bad of a game.
This is just one of the innovations he's responsible for. In Judgment Day,
and then he tried to make an Intellivision that no one asked for. And if you question him, he'll call you a man baby and block you on Twitter.
They had a brief section where they would review hardware. The segment's noteworthy for having Evangeline Lilly as one of the hardware girls very early.
Yeah, so the Wasp, or before she was on Lost and in the MCU, she would model peripherals on reviews on the run.
Early in her career, she would leave the show to be in the hugely successful show Lost. Portal was a comedy drama about MMOs hosted by Dave Meinstein. By using what is commonly known as machinima, the show did various skits and segments with video game characters as the actors. Players was a show about celebrities who play video games. Pulse was a news show about the gaming industry. Hosted by Patrick Clark and Ronnie Lynn Riley, this was a weekly recap in the world of video games. Sweat was a show strictly about sports games. And finally Starcade, which was reruns of the old arcade show from the 1980s. The channel was off to a promising start.
I said I was trying to make a video about like before G4 and other networks did like video game shows. It's like, all right, what shows about video games were there? I tried watching some episodes of Starcade. I don't know if it's because this was back in like the late 70s, early 80s. Oh wow, this is hard to watch. And they weren't even playing like well-known arcade games. Like, I mean, oh yeah, they're playing Burger Time there, but like some of the games they were playing is like, what the fuck is this? I've never seen this game on any type of compilation. It's never been re-released on anything. I hardly even seen these things on the Switch. But it's just like, holy shit. Okay, so we're 5 minutes in, and this is still at the point where I'm still watching G4.
Gamers liked the fact that there was a channel specifically dedicated to something that for many was more than just a hobby. They enjoyed the somewhat cheesy but genuine feel of the shows. Since a nice group of the hosts actually worked in the industry, the audience identified with them since they knew what they were talking about. Gamers flocked to the G4 message boards to talk about their favorite games, their favorite shows on the network, and developed a strong community. Many of the show's hosts visited the forums and helped to make things feel more interactive. In November of 2002, with the launch of Xbox Live, many of the hosts would give out their gamer tags and would frequently set up times to play with their fans. Return to Castle Wolfenstein, Mech Assault, and Rainbow Six were popular choices for the community. The channel ran 24/7, and with only a handful of shows, there were tons of reruns. At the time, the channel was only reaching 15 million homes. And that's not 15 million viewers, that's 15 million homes that had the channel in their cable listing. With such a small reach, they were having trouble attracting advertisers. As such, the slots they had allocated for commercials were filled with humorous bumpers, video game world records, and celebrity station IDs. To try to bring in more advertisers, Hirshhorn made offers to have commercials run during the shows disguised as part of the program. They offer to have games presented as special features in shows like G4TV.com and Pulse. One of their more successful marketing endeavors was to get Pringles to sponsor one of their shows, and so Cheat became Cheat, Pringles Gamer's Guide. They had some buy-in from game companies and stores like EB Games, but it wasn't enough to offset the cost of running the channel. In 2002, they started their yearly coverage of E3. Meanwhile, in late 2002, trouble was brewing on the set of Arena. One day, seemingly from out of nowhere, Travis Oates and Will Wheaton quit the show. Fans asked what happened, and Wheaton wrote a lengthy blog post about it. In the post, he spoke about how he, Oates, and the crew were constantly mistreated by an incompetent producer. The producer shirked most of his responsibilities, and because of this, the show suffered. The producer was in charge of bringing new players in, but only paid them in pizza, and often kept them waiting for hours before finally getting to play. Word spread amongst the local gaming community of the mistreatment, and people stopped showing up. They needed someone to play, so the producer filled the empty spots with G4 employees and interns. After numerous altercations with the producer, Wheaton and Oates quit. The network replaced them with Lee Rarman, an ex-American gladiator, and television actor Michael Loudon. While still angry over the departure of the original hosts, the fans eventually accepted Rarman, but never warmed up to Loudon. The producers of Arena fired Loudon.
Oh, God. Oh, look at that crush dash on Babby Kevin Pereira. Holy shit. Pro tip, kids, you have to shave that off to grow this. I'm just saying. Oh, man. So, yeah, Arena was one of those shows that they brought back. He looks like a grown-up Kyle Broflovski. Jesus Christ. Yeah, like, Austin and Gina tried bringing, Arena back, and they try to bring like WWE guys in there, but like, man, when you're doing that and that's not enough to save your network, like, holy shit.
And brought in Kevin Pereira. Pereira was a G4 forum member by the name of Captain Immy that was hired early on by G4 as a production assistant for G4TV.com. He did some of the writing for the show, as well as scheduled calls with the audience. He also briefly worked on Pulse after Ronnie Lynn Riley left. Starting in 2003, they had G4ya, a heavily marketed video game award show. They tried to make it a legitimate show, but with awards like Alt Sports Award powered by Mountain Dew, EB Gamer's Choice Award, and Best Stride Longest Lasting Game, it was difficult. Still, it was a fairly large event, and that did bring in the advertisers, so it wasn't all bad. The channel plugged along happily for 2 years. Some shows like Game On were canceled, while others...
They want to pause on that one. Let's just get on something that's not going to get me in trouble. Yeah, so the G4ya and the Spike TV Game Awards, man, like, I know people like to scoff at the Keeleys, but like, that's probably the most legitimate game award show out there. Yes, that's riddled with ads, but it's not as bad as Spike when they gave Here Comes the Pain Best Fighting Game, and then immediately cut to an exhibition match with Victoria, Trish Stratus, Rey Mysterio, and Chris Jericho. As it's like, oh, this is the only way you're getting us on the show. We have to win Best Fighting Game. I don't even know what SmackDown Here Comes the Pain lost to. I'll have to look that up after.
Grew in popularity. Unfortunately, there just wasn't enough interest at the time. People were watching.
Oh, the High Heat Baseball review.
To pick up the channel. Cable channels need to have a reach of at least 40 million homes before advertisers would show interest.
It's like, if you give this game higher than a 0, I'm going to kick you in the ding-dong.
The growth of G4 was too slow for Comcast, so they took drastic measures to keep it alive. There arose an opportunity to buy Tech TV and merge it with G4. Paul Allen, the owner of Tech TV, put it up for sale, and G4 purchased it. The main reason for this was G4 would inherit Tech TV's slot on DirecTV, which would open them up to about 50 to 60 million homes. Tech TV fans were none too happy because they felt G4 was in this for the wrong reasons, and would ruin Tech TV. On May 28, 2004, the channel relaunched as G4 Tech TV. While the merger is what saved G4 from being taken off the air,
this is usually when I started
all it
watching.
really did was lengthen the process. Comcast closed the Tech TV studio in San Francisco, laid off numerous employees, and relocated the rest to their LA studios. G4 kept the higher profile shows like The Screensavers and X-Play, but canceled most everything else. They even took this opportunity to clean house on some of their own shows. They canceled Portal, Arena, Pulse, Players, Starcade, and Blister as a way to restructure the channel. Since Tech TV had the Electric Playground, they figured having Judgment Day and EP were redundant, so they canceled Judgment Day. G4 no longer wanted the channel to be TV for gamers, so they changed the slogan to Stay Connected. To fit within the new generic tech lifestyle, Filter changed from top 10 video game lists to more lists about concerts, TV, and movies. Pringles ended their sponsorship,
That's what I hated.
and Cheat, Pringles Gamer's Guide, reverted back to just Cheat. X-Play was already a favorite amongst Tech TV fans, and quickly became a favorite with G4 viewers. Hosted by Adam Sessler and Morgan Webb, the show mixed game reviews with goofy comedy segments. The Screensavers was a show about computers and technology. They had interviews, viewer calls, and answered many tech-related questions. When they moved to G4, they moved away from computers and technology, and the show became more about pop culture. As the year progressed, it became clearer about what was going on. More Tech TV folks were being laid off, and the few remaining TV shows, with the exception of the Screensavers and X-Play, were cancelled. Tech TV fans were furious. In February of 2005, only 10 months after the merger, they dropped the Tech TV tag altogether and reverted back to just being G4. With Arena cancelled, Pereira took over hosting duties on the Screensavers, since the G4 producers fired almost the entire cast. Dan Huerd, one of the guys who worked on the Screensavers, spoke out about the show after G4 let him go. He explained that while on the Screensavers, they took live calls from the audience to answer tech questions. When G4 took over, they no longer wanted to take live questions. The calls would now be pre-produced. He said, "Management didn't want geeks asking questions on our show anymore, despite the fact that they were the intended audience." He would record the Q&A segments ahead of time, and they would air the ones approved by the producers. This was similar to what G4TV.com did when they were still on. They would search the forums for topics they wanted to bring to the show. They would then contact the person who posted it, and would set up a time to call them. They would record the segment, edit it appropriately, and air it at a later time. During this time, Scott Rubin left G4 to host Gamehead on Spike TV, as well as to restart All Games as its own website. He was replaced by Jeff Keighley, a video game journalist. G4 changed their slogan again, this time to the very generic sounding Video Game TV. Later in 2005, Hirschhorn announced he'd no longer be in charge of the channel, and Neil Tiles took over as president of G4. He previously worked at DirecTV, Fox.
Okay, I need to see this transition. So,
channel, and Neil Tiles TV. Later in 2005, Hirschhorn announced he'd no longer be in charge of the channel, and Neil
it's the same fucking guy. I know it's literally not the same guy, but it might as well be.
Tiles took over as president of G4. He previously worked at DirecTV, Fox Sports.
You got rid of one yuppie with glasses and replaced them with another yuppie with glasses.
PN. He announced the network would be retooled as a male-oriented channel, much like Spike TV. Moving further away from gaming, they canceled G4TV.com. Laura and Tina both left to go work at Microsoft, and Keighley returned to writing and working behind the scenes at G4. They also canceled Filter and Sweat. As a way to appeal to the more male demographic, they let Corey Rouse go from Cheat, and brought in Kristen Holt, a semi-finalist in the first season of American Idol. Continuing to distance themselves from Tech TV, they revamped the Screensavers, and it became Attack of the Show.
And right there is where I stopped. 12 minutes, half of this video, it was like, okay, watching. Other than Electric Playground, Reviews on the Run, and X-Play, everything else, fuck off.
Which I still feel was a name they got by randomly pulling words out of a hat. Attack of the Show was a live show that was a mixture of pop culture, comedy routines, news, and tech reviews. Essentially, it was the revamped The Screensavers with a new name. Pereira stayed on, but all the other co-hosts left. They looked for a permanent co-host, and discovered actress Olivia Munn. The chemistry between her and Pereira was a lot of what kept the viewers tuning in. Well, that, and also because she would do things like this, and this. Tommy Tallarico started...
And you wonder why it was such a talking point with Frost. That's the biggest thing. Like, okay, wait, we want to talk about the thing. I hate putting it in nauseam. This will eventually go away until he makes this follow-up, or someone else makes the follow-up documentary. But sexism in gaming, does it exist? Absolutely. Absolutely it exists. Okay? I will never deny that. It's still bad. It's still a terrible thing in the gaming industry. Still a terrible thing here on, like, with content creation, live streaming and all that. It's still terrible. But she completely lost the argument when she yelled at the top of her lungs, Olivia Munn and Morgan Webb did not exist to be nice on the eyes for you. With all the shit that Olivia Munn did on Attack of the Show, I cannot say that that statement is false. And Olivia Munn will be the first to tell you, yeah, that's what I was hired for, and I did my job. If Grandpa Simpson quoted, that was the style at the time. So that's the problem that most people have with that rant. It's not that the sexism in gaming. Like, I know we are trying our hardest to move away from that. But when you make a statement like that and say they didn't exist to be nice to the eyes, like, okay, Morgan Webb was a carryover from Tech TV. She was on Screensavers and Call for Help with Leo Laporte. She was on there to do that job. They answered the questions, the tech questions, the gaming questions, and then they moved her over, paired her with Adam Sessler, and X-Play was a hit. Like, you just can't say like with all those clips we just saw of Olivia Munn, like that's okay, I'm moving on.
Part of the very successful Video Games Live concert series, and since it started taking up much of his time, he was on Electric Playground less and less, until finally leaving the show altogether. In 2006, just 4 years after the launch of the channel, it barely resembled its former self. There was a new president, a hostile merger, and almost all the launch shows were either cancelled or retooled. They brought back Filter with a new host, Beth Ostreski, a model and wife of radio personality Howard Stern. The show now only did lists about pop culture. It didn't last and was cancelled again a few months later. Icons was cancelled as well, leaving Cinematech as the only original lineup show still on the air. In 2007, they changed the slogan again to TV That's Plugged In. Now that they cleared out almost all their original content, they picked up numerous shows for syndication. Cops, Cheaters, and Ninja Warrior to name a few. They ran Cops and Cheaters marathons so much, it turned off many of what would have been their audience. This was around the time when most of the remaining core audience jumped ship. A lot of them ignored the channel, but still frequented the message boards. In order to try to keep at least some aspects of gaming on G4, they expanded their annual E3 footage by covering the Microsoft press conference. The problem was, no one thought about the spots for commercial breaks, so fans watching it live saw the first ever look at the Mass Effect trailer cut off by a commercial. On top of that,
no. Oh, was it Mass?
Due to FCC regulations, they had to do a station ID at midnight, which cut off the end of the Microsoft conference. That just so happened to be where they unveiled Halo 3 for the first time. It was a disaster. Continuing their attempts to appeal to the young male demographic, they started airing things like the not-so-subtly named Midnight Spank, a block of programming that ran more adult content like Ed the Sock's Night Party and G4's Late Night Peep Show. During this block, they did a variation of Cinematech called Nocturnal Emissions, where they showed sexually suggestive cutscenes and weird game footage, mostly from Japanese titles. Over the next few years, they tried to create some original...
Here's one that shows the people coming. Okay. My brain kind of just went blur right near the end there of all the stuff that they were flipping around. Okay, what was the point I was gonna bring up? Yeah, cancel. Okay, yeah, people jumping ship. Yeah, Code Monkeys. I've never seen the show, but I heard it was good. Yeah, people jumping ship. Oh, hang on. I had a thought. I have to go back. Hang on. Oh, yes, this. I think I have the clip of this saved somewhere. You can hear, like, when this trailer was going off, you can hear the production system going, we gotta go. And you can hear Adam Sessler yelling in the back, it's not done. It's not done. It's still running. It's still running. They cut the commercial, and then they had to cut back to the panel and replay the trailer again because they fucked up. Anyways, Code Monkeys.
In the form of animated shows. Happy Tree
Also,
Friends,
what's up,
the
CR?
intentionally cute, overly violent show, Spaceballs,
Happy Tree
the
Friends.
animated series, and the crude 8-bit style comedy, Code Monkeys. Out of the three, Code Monkeys was the only one to actually get some traction, but still lasted just 2 seasons. They spent ridiculous amounts of money to secure the syndication rights to shows like Heroes and Lost instead of creating new original programming. Cinematech, the last original program from G4, was cancelled in April of 2007. Ironically now, years after the G4TV merger, all the G4 shows were gone, and the two most popular programs on the platform were X-Play and Attack of the Show. Further downgrading G4, they closed their Santa Monica studio, and the people who weren't laid off were moved to the LA facility. X-Play, being one of the most popular shows, had a new set built. They got rid of the relaxed atmosphere of the old set and went for this weird futuristic style with glass balls glued to the floor. With the popularity of X-Play growing, they redid the studio yet again less than a year later and changed the format of the show. They removed the comedy segments and now claim they had brutally honest game reviews. They also dedicated some time on the show to do interviews.
They're always
and
brutally
game
honest.
The show was expanded to run 5 nights a week. Cheat was cancelled and became a segment within X-Play, with Kristen Holt giving game tips a few times a week. A little over a year later, the show was dialed back to 3 nights a week, and more people were laid off. It seemed they were stuck. No matter what they did, the channel just wasn't growing. Less and less people were watching the shows, so cable networks started dropping the channel due to low viewership. 2010 was a major blow for G4. In November, DirecTV removed them from their channel lineup. So all the work they did in absorbing Tech TV, firing everyone, and constantly searching for an identity for the channel, it all finally caught up with them. Ultimately, they ended up ruining 2 networks. Olivia Munn left Attack of the Show in order to pursue her acting career. She was replaced by another actress, Candice Bailey. In 2010, G4 was absorbed into X-Play as part of their year in review. In 2012, they redid the X-Play studio yet again. Adam Sessler had friends within G4 telling him that they'd heard rumors that he was going to be let go in April. One day while filming an episode, he was told the vice president of production wanted to meet with him in his dressing room. Toward the end of the episode, he noticed the VP off camera, and he knew that he was fired. After his firing, he got a job working for Revision 3, a company founded by many of the people who had been fired by G4. Morgan stayed on X-Play. Blair Herter, a former MTV...
Yeah, Rev 3. Man, that was something that really should have taken off more. They had a working relationship with Screw Attack. I think Death Battle was like, I want to say like a week exclusive on Revision 3. They had Revision 3 stuff in the end of the episodes. But yeah, okay, point. This guy also ran DC for a little bit. DC Comics. Well, like their media division. And this was the guy that was the president of the new G4 when they relaunched. He was also the one that fully supported that rant until he didn't and left. He signed off on the company. Him and Jessica Chobot, or his wife, Jessica Chobot, IGN, all that stuff. They left the country. kind of pulled the Bernie Burns. He's just like, I'm out. Deleted his tweet supporting it. Told G4 to delete the tweet supporting it, and remove the original video off of all their YouTube channels. It's still on their Twitch channel. If you go on G4TV in highlights, it's still there, I believe.
Personality replaced Adam Sessler. In early 2012, Tiles stepped down as the president, and the job went to Adam Stotsky, a marketing chief for NBC. Stotsky began meeting with the owners of Esquire magazine to rebrand the channel as the Esquire Network. The deal fell through, and the Style Network ended up becoming Esquire. In May, Pereira announced he'd be leaving G4 to work full-time on his production company, Super Creative. After Pereira left, the ratings tanked. In October of 2012, G4 announced the last 2 original programs, X-Play and Attack of the Show, would cease production before the end of the year. Attack of the Show had a rotating cast of hosts for the final months. They filmed the last episode in December and aired it on January 23rd, 2013, the same day as the last episode of X-Play. Morgan Webb's now a creative advisor for Activision Blizzard, and Blair Herter's working for DC Comics. With the end of the last 2 original shows, the channel simply went through the motions by running nothing but syndicated shows and reruns of old content. Now the channel's been dropped from almost every cable network, and the syndication rights of their shows have lapsed. G4 continuously suffered from an identity crisis. They got rid of almost all their video game related content, despite the fact that X-Play, a show that reviewed video games, was one of their most popular programs. Their yearly coverage of E3 was also a consistent hit with the audience. Still, it seemed like they shunned video games despite being the only thing that really consistently worked. No one was making an effort to tune
Twitter
in
was
to
a
reruns of
thing
Campus PD
while they were still
or
a
Human
thing.
Wrecking Balls, and yet they insisted on bringing in more and more syndicated programming. I know there's a lot of disdain for G4, and I get why. For thousands of Tech TV fans, they had their programs gutted. Also, what they considered a lesser channel could get more exposure, which sadly is exactly what happened. They can at least take solace in the irony that the last two shows to survive were X-Play and Attack of the Show, and nothing from the original G4 lineup made it past 2007. G4 didn't realize the goldmine they were sitting on. When Neil Tiles spoke about retooling the channel, he stated that it was because gamers like to play games, but not necessarily watch a bunch of shows with games on the screen. With the rise of Let's Plays and the overwhelming success of Twitch TV, that shows just how wrong that statement was. I think the biggest problem was that they were still thinking in terms.
Wow. Remember when remember when this site in particular was like the destination for games? Sorry, I saw a clip on TikTok today that kind of broke me, where some of the founding fathers of gameplay stuff on Justin TV, and they migrated over to Twitch, basically just broke down and said, yeah, this is not a gaming site anymore. Which it's not. Like, I mean, you know, everything's got to evolve to survive, but it's like, you know, Twitch was made to offshoot the gaming content off of Justin TV and let Justin TV be the IRL, you know, watch me just, you know, live life, channel. But then they made the IRL section on Twitch, shut down Justin TV, and then you got that famous clip of "Thank God I don't have to pretend to like video games anymore." I'm trying to remember who this woman is. He looks familiar.
TV. They should have had more shows like Arena with a better mix of games and not crammed into 30-minute segments. They could have had 2 to 3 hour Friday night game vlogs where the game
What a username, Fart Monster.
You think EA or Activision wouldn't have jumped at having a 3-hour weekly spot to advertise their games? The review shows, news shows, and even the technology variety shows, like Attack of the Show, were fine. There was no need to get rid of them. I have no idea why they canceled shows like G4TV.com. What better way to keep the audience tuned in than with a show that spoke directly to them? It was a way to interact directly with the audience, and I can't imagine it costing that much to produce. I realized there was a lot of time to fill, but why not have things like StarCraft tournaments, or even classic game blocks and live speedruns? This was the first all-gaming TV channel, and they filled it with reruns of Fastlane. If they wanted to venture outside of video games, they could have stayed within the geek realm, with Magic the Gathering and Pokemon tournaments. How about every Saturday night at midnight they run an all-night D&D campaign? Perhaps have 1 to 2 hours for board games? Was the channel doomed to fail? Before leaving Attack of the Show, Kevin Pereira had an interview with former president and creator of G4, Charles Hirschhorn. He lamented the sloppy takeover of Tech TV, and said if he could do it over again, he would have done it in a way to not alienate both audiences. He also explained how he came up with a name for the channel.
And I had this idea for a channel, and I just sort of screamed to my wife, Cynthia. I said, I need a name for this channel. Just go online and buy a URL. And she said, great. And I said, anything video game channel works. Just find anything. Sure. And they were all taken. I said, well, just start with V or G or something. Find something. And she said, all right. She said, G4 is available. I said, buy that one.
To me, he seemed like somebody who saw the potential in a video game channel, but wasn't really interested in games. He just wanted to capitalize on them. The thing is, that's okay. Almost everything that you have was created by someone with the intention of making money. Hirschhorn did a good job of bringing in people with industry experience, but should have taken more time to brainstorm with them about what the channel needed before the launch. When things got bad, they should have looked for input, rather than just firing everyone and format swapping. The potential was there, gaming was only getting bigger, and they should have worked harder to find ways to appeal to that audience. Instead, after the merger, they got rid of what made them unique and turned into a bad version of every other channel. I loved the first 2 years of G4, warts and all. It was amateurish, but it had an amazing charm to it. My friends and I were constantly quoting the bumpers, and honestly, we still do.
It was a hot summer afternoon, and I was just out of the shower. I turned on my PS2, my VCR, and bang, I hit the 1,000,000 points on my first run. I was shaking like crazy and unable to play after that for a couple of hours. It was pretty insane.
The concept of the channel was for a new revenue stream.
I have no idea what that
the
was.
Hosts, writers, and staff that work behind the scenes were trying to make something special. Their hearts were in the right place, but they were constantly hampered by the people in charge. From idiotic, short-sighted, foul-tempered producers to upper management who didn't see the value in what they had. G4TV for gamers was something special, but now it's seen as an oddity, a failed experiment in getting games on television.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the rise and fall G4TV for gamers. Like I love going back to this every now and then, just going like the good old days. So going to this, like, let me get some video game music on here. Oh, please speed up hard drive. Like, please. I'm begging you. Now a lot of people ask, like, or a lot of people come in questions like, why didn't this G4 take off? Like, it just seems like they're just making the same mistakes as before. It's just not reading the room. And I'm sorry, like, YouTube and Twitch just basically took over G4, because they're like, okay, I understand you're making this show and we're gonna talk about games and pop culture and stuff like this, but like, this guy's already been doing it for years on YouTube. Why do I need you guys? Like, G4, I don't think ever came up and, like, this new G4 never came up and said, here's what we're gonna give you guys. But they just went like, all right, no, we're gonna bring back X-Play, we're gonna bring back Attack the Show, we're gonna try other new things, we're gonna have a D&D campaign, and just like, no one cared. And I said it before, I'll say it again, X-Play, when they relaunched with this G4, should never have touched any of the games that they missed in the last 10 years. They should have just been like, all right, off to the races. We're going to go with the skits. We're going to go with the reviews. All these new games, we're going to go for it. No, they're just like, oh, we missed out on Jedi Fallen Order. We missed out on Borderlands 3. We missed out on all these Call of Duties. We missed out on God of War. We missed out on Mario Odyssey, Breath of the Wild. Like people have been given opinions of these games already, and have also formulated their own opinions because they actually played the game. We don't need someone new coming in and playing the game over again and, and giving that opinion.